see you guys in the dark.
This is a story about an ex-friend of mine. I tried to help him through his terrifying obsession with a girl, to no avail. I've always been the type to observe everything from a safe distance. Seldom am I ever brought into drama, but people come to me for advice a lot. I've given my best and most sound counseling to friends, but this particular guy that I knew was beyond any form of help. This guy, we'll just call him Andy, made no point to cover up his psycho. He was mumbling out loud to himself in public, then being physically harmful. He was quite the basket case. It all started with me knowing very little about this guy, because I just kept to myself. When it came to gym class, when we would walk around the track, I would just have my headphones in most of the time. When a girl began walking around the track with him and talking with him, I instantly noticed as I could overhear them talking about some bands that I enjoyed as well. I'm not really sure how I wound up in this group, but I believe that one of them made a move to hang out with me, possibly my hilarious gay friend. This group consisted of Andy, the psycho, Krista, Mac, two other girls apart from myself. We had our subgroups. Krista happened to be heavily into anime, while Mac and I would get into deep conversations about mysteries of life. Andy, on the other hand, mostly sat and listened to Krista. He had an obvious fixation on her, and by the middle of the school year, everyone, including Krista, knew how desperate he was for her. Krista had stated that she did not date, as her father was very protective of her, and to be honest, she kind of gave off a lesbian vibe. Anyways, despite the efforts to pull away from him, Andy was practically on top of her at all times. Forcing hugs she awkwardly yanked away from, making it known that he wanted her bad. One occasion, she happened to block his number after realizing that it was a mistake giving it to him. He managed to steal her phone, then unblock the number. Upon the confrontation, he had admitted to unblocking his twin brother's number on her phone. Andy absolutely hated his twin. Hated being compared to him, which would be expected, as his brother was the charismatic one with lots of friends. Yet Andy said on multiple occasions that he wished that his brother was dead, and joked about the joyful thought of ending his life. I didn't judge harshly at first, but my friend Mac did. He let Andy know what a creep he was, and how horrifying his thoughts were. While Krista and Andy were talking one day, he would just set his seat right beside her. He was telling her not to talk to his brother, and somewhere in this conversation, in the school library, he slapped her for not listening to him. I'll never forget the fear and anger that was on her face. From then on, even after this awkward apology, Krista just let him know that he should stay away from her. Sadly, he had taken to talking to me all along, as I had been a soundboard, whether I cared about it or not. Every day on the bus, it was all about Krista. Some days he would just chant her name, get lost in his thoughts about her. I try to drop subtle hints that she's not interested in him, or at the very least to treat her like a normal person and just give her some space. Apart from his desire for her, he was the most desperate guy that I had ever met. He would ask out every single girl that he met and spoke to for about a day. He would message me all over Facebook about he needed a girlfriend. And luckily I had been in a relationship for about 4 years, and he knew that he couldn't have me. That still wouldn't stop him from hitting on me in such small ways that I didn't realize at first, including a near proposal. He just typed my name. When I asked him what was up, he said that you're beautiful, but you look exactly like someone from my past. Makes me very sad remembering her every time I look at you. I miss her so much. He had a knack for making people uncomfortable. Some days I couldn't help but ignore him. Krista evaded him till high school, but Andy's obsession only became more intensifying. I genuinely thought that he would be helped, and I could get through to him while keeping my own distance. But he just kept setting off too many alarms. Firstly, he was training for some entry into a military camp of sorts, and was discharged for reasons in relation to his mental state. though he wouldn't get too far into the subject. Secondly, every day he wrote me at weird times, early in the morning, just to tell me, "Help, I can't stop thinking about her. I'm madly in love with her." This was clearly not true, as he made moves on me and many other girls in the time that he had known her. He had made remarks that he self-harmed himself just to get her off of his mind, but nothing happened to work. He'd also somehow convinced himself that she wanted him and would frequent the grocery store that she went to just so he could say hi, though she kept her head down and just ignored him. One morning, as I was browsing social media, he happened to message me the usual. "I need her. I love her so much. Help me. I'm going nuts." I tried to help him analyze his feelings and then come to his senses, that he was fine and just to let her be. I thought, if he's hitting on any other girls, but claiming that he's in love with her, let's see what he says to this. I typed out, "Tell me, what do you love about her?" I cannot believe what he sent me. It was the most ridiculous and degrading message that I have ever read about somebody. She has small tits. I absolutely adore that about her. I dream of taking her virginity, and I don't think she would mind how small I happen to be, if you know what I mean. Smiley face. I felt like I read some psycho's personal diary. Truthfully, this girl was pretty tiny, 18 years old, not even 110 pounds, which made me fear that he'd prey on her. He was very short, but she appeared vulnerable and smaller than him. I was on my last straw playing therapist for this dude who clearly had no damn idea that he was scaring this girl. Up to the last time that we happened to speak, the worst thing that he requested of me was to get a hold of her new number somehow for him and attempt to lure her in to see him once again. He was frustrated with my decline. He pleaded with me to help him obtain her address. Needless to say, that last night that we spoke, I told him that I wish him well, told him that I would not assist him in terrorizing my friend. I blocked him. It's been longer than a year since then. I just hope that he got the help that he needed, and I hope for her sake that he hasn't found out where she lives by now. There was a guy that I knew who was a firefighter, and he was really serious about it. He started out forest firefighting and went to school to be a city firefighter. He was truly in love with this job. A little too much, unfortunately. Houses around our area began catching on fire for no clear reason. Eventually they found out that it was arson, but they didn't know who it was. The last of these arsons resulted in a death. An old man that lived in the home couldn't get out of bed on his own and was trapped in his room. Eventually it was found out that this guy had been starting these fires in order to do his job and then put them out. He was convicted of manslaughter and arson, spent a few years, maybe about 4 or 5, in jail, but he's out now. I don't feel like the punishment fit the crime for this one. Not sure where he is or what he happens to be doing, but I've certainly seen him walking free. Back in 1997, there was a guy that we called White John that hung around with us occasionally. He was a black guy, but tried very hard to behave the way that he thought white people did. All his friends happened to be white. One day he stopped coming around us. We figured he decided to start spending all his time with the Asian girlfriend in Manhattan that he always talked about. A couple of days later, he's on every major news station in New York and on the front page of every newspaper. Turns out he was a serial rapist that targeted Asian women, and the girlfriend that he always spoke about had actually broken up with him several months before. He had been stalking her and doing things with her and other Asian girls after the breakup. He was caught after he did all this and then killed the ex-girlfriend. We were shocked to hear this. There was never any indication that he was capable of such terrible things. I would sit and go over every interaction that I ever had with him to see if there were ever any signs. I just didn't see any of them. It rattled me pretty badly when I thought all of the times that I had been alone with him, walking to the store, or whatever. Ever since then, I examine the people that I'm friends with, looking for any warning signs that there might be. It still affects me to this day. I didn't know this guy too well, but my best friend knew him a lot more than I did. They hung out a few times, got pretty flirty with each other. He was a convention goer, as are me and my friends. We happened to attend anime gaming conventions every once in a while. I saw him at a couple of cons because we also worked for a regular vendor. He was a good-looking guy. He was Asian, with the whole J-rock look, so he was pretty popular among a lot of the con girls. He was pretty strange, though. I didn't give it any thought until I realized that he compulsively lied, that he started sending off red flags, because he very much reminded me of someone else that I knew who was manipulative and abusive. My friend hung out with him, one-on-one a few times, liked him on some kind of level. They were flirty, but nothing ever came of it. Not a few months later, after a convention, we hear that this guy was arrested, and sure enough, there are news articles about it to prove it. He held his girlfriend captive for over 2 months, beat her with sticks and a crowbar, broke her bones, forced her to kneel on grains of rice, forced her to cut herself with a knife. She happened to have lost hearing in one of her ears. I never met this girlfriend, to my knowledge at least. I wish I could find the follow-up to this. I have no idea if he's still in jail or not. A lot of people in the convention community in our area were shocked to hear about this, especially seeing as how he happened to seem like a really cool dude. My best friend Bella and I haven't seen each other for about a year, because Bella happens to have a baby. Bella has texted me saying that she is in my area. She wanted to spend some time with me. We met up around 12 p.m. in the afternoon. She brought her daughter along. We walked around for hours and played at the park. Around 7, we went to McDonald's for supper. Bella and I decided to take the night as a best friends night. Bella had texted her parents to see if they would babysit. They happened to have said yes. This is where the story gets pretty creepy. Bella and I dropped her daughter off at her parents', got in the car, and then went to the next town over for the fireworks and watched the stars, and then looked down at the entire city. Bella and I had been sitting there till about 5 a.m. We happened to hear footsteps from behind us. As we looked behind us, nothing was there, other than the forest right behind us. We immediately got in the car. Bella turned on her headlights, and we saw this man who was dressed in black, with a white t-shirt covered in blood. We screamed at the top of our lungs to the point where we felt sick. Just before Bella turned the headlights off, we saw a gun in the man's left hand. Bella stepped on the gas and ran the man over. We got out, and the man was knocked out, or so we thought. I decided to go run and grab the gun with my sweater, so his fingerprints would be the only ones on it. No sooner did I pick it up and turn around, the man happened to grab my leg. I managed to escape and get back to the car and tell Bella to just drive. We made it to the highway. I called the cops as Bella was driving. We made it to town, got to the police station, gave them the gun to see if the man was in the system. Turns out he was charged with murder in first degree. That escaped from prison about 5 months prior. The police later found the man hiding in the woods, in a bridge tunnel, where they discovered 6 bodies of men and women. The man was then charged and arrested. I'm so horrified for myself and Bella, as Bella happens to have a 1-year-old daughter and is a single mother. The father happens to be unknown. We could have been this man's next victim for all we know. I'm so glad that we are safe. Bella and I are still close to this day. We spend every single day together since that day. His name was Mr. Nobody. He started out as the person that kids would blame if one of them forgot to flush the toilet. And then suddenly his mythology evolved. For the record, all of this was conceived by 3 of my kids, who at the time were 6, 5, and 3 years old. Mr. Nobody had no eyes, no teeth, no tongue, no nose. He didn't wear pants. Leave the used toilet paper between his butt so that you can tell where he is by his smell. He doesn't wear a shirt, but has a pocket cut with his skin where he keeps the key to our house. He can be invisible whenever he wanted to. They claim that he had a beard since he was a baby. He bites off his fingernails, then drips blood where he walks. Thankfully, It's been a few years since Mr. Nobody has been in our house, but I was definitely a little creeped out when the children told me all of this. My buddy Gavin had always tried to be a superhero. Yes, you heard that right. Not that he always loved superheroes. Not even that he always wanted to be a superhero. He just made a costume and a mask. And when we were in middle school, we had been crusading around the neighborhood to stop crime, all the way up until I was a sophomore in high school. I'm sure you've heard about most people like this in the news, like the people in that movie Kick-Ass. Gavin and I lived in the St. Cloud projects, and even though I doubt that he helped in any way, there was a lot of crime and drug dealing to go around. The most difficult thing for Gavin, I think, was that he lived in Minnesota, a state that doesn't allow wearing masks in public. While most beat cops that come around our neighborhood, they all just laughed at Gavin and his mask antics. There was one cop that would have none of it, Officer Mitchell. He had a real hard-on for Gavin, or the Depths as he called his alter ego, and always demand he take off the mask and not go around in disguise in public. More on him later. In truth, Gavin's outfit was pretty sweet. It was all black. The fabric was flowing, but not too baggy, and the mask was made of this tough black plastic. It looked kind of like a skull, and the eye lenses were a piercing silver tint. He'd actually been working on it for a year. Every night after school, instead of hanging out or doing his homework, he'd go into the basement and sew up his costume. I kept telling him that he could just buy a Halloween getup from Kmart, which would be a lot less traceable, but he insisted on making his own. As you can probably gather, he was big into Batman, and just like the character, would only work at night. This helped him avoid Officer Mitchell a few times when being chased down so that he wouldn't be unmasked. The outfit was perfect camouflage for the dark alleyways. A lot of people, including teachers and most of the grown-ups in the projects, had figured that Gavin was mentally unstable, or retarded as they say. I never thought that was accurate though. And if I'm being totally fair, Gavin was an averagely smart kid who was just preoccupied with things that took away from him ever getting good grades, or learning anything that would get him a job. He wasn't crazy. He'd just been through a lot. His parents divorced when he was 5. Before you dismiss this experience as just another typical 21st century reality, you should know that his father was in deep gambling debt, and his mother was hooked on crack from the Minneapolis Crips. I'll let you imagine how all this played out for young Gavin when the three of them were living under the same roof. They didn't so much divorce as they separated, and really neither of them was fit to raise Gavin as he went to live with his grandfather. When his grandfather croaked, he went into foster homes, getting passed along 7 times in 4 years. He eventually landed back in St. Cloud with his older third cousin Howie, twice removed. Howie did shift work at a supermarket warehouse, and didn't have much time or patience for Gavin, so you can imagine what their relationship was like. I actually remember going along with Gavin, or the Depths, a few times when he scoured the streets at night for trouble. I don't know why, but for some reason he was never bothered with me knowing his secret identity. In truth, when you live in the ghetto, there's little that your neighbors don't know about you. Anyways, I remember one night I tagged along with the Depths after he'd heard the news of serial rapists in the area. I wasn't in costume, but he was, as well as Durwood, his sidekick. Now, trying to be a superhero in real life is pretty pathetic, but being the sidekick to a Fox superhero, that's got to be the shits. We mostly drank coffee and soda, freezing our balls off on the street corner and spying on the opposite side, looking for anything suspicious. Now Durwood and I, after an hour and a half, had had enough. There was nothing there except for a few drunks, ranting crazies, and maybe a hooker in a long trench coat. The Depths, however, refused to call it a night, insisting that we'd find the rapist. Not long after, we saw this tall man wearing baggy, layered clothing who kept circling the block over and over again. "That guy keeps circling back," Gavin hissed through the mask. Derwin and I looked at each other, And even though we weren't friends, we could read the concerned panic in the other's eyes. I think that we both knew the shit was about to hit the fan when we heard that Gavin's paper cup hit the sidewalk. Gavin, like a shadow crossing your room when a car goes by at night, lurched forward and ran to the other side. He got right up and grabbed the guy by the lapels of his coat, yelling at him, demanding to know where his whereabouts on such and such a date. A struggle ensued. I watched from the other side, paralyzed. Durwood stood next to me like a statue. A fist flew from the man, and he shouted, "The fuck's with you, freak? Get the fuck off of me!" Gavin then retaliated with one of those karate punches he'd taught himself from online videos, and it did rock the guy back a few steps. Then the next thing I saw brought a swell of feverish heat bubbling to the otherwise shivering body. From out of the guy's deep pocket, he brought out a gleamingly silver snub-nosed revolver. He pointed it, titled it to the side at Gavin's head. "Get the fuck off me, bruh." Gavin didn't move, and I thought then that it was over. But he suddenly reached up, grabbed the guy by the wrist of the hand holding the gun. I sunk back into the shadows and heaved, watching the gray barrel teeter and sway in several directions as the two of them grappled for it. Without a word, Durwood ran forward to the scene. I watched in abject horror as he got closer to the point of the flaying firearm. I sunk deeper into the darkness. I then leapt and waxed cold upon the thunder of the gun's shots. The bullet ricocheted across the concrete, and the weapon fell from the man's hand as both Gavin and Durwood pushed him to the ground. I don't know if it was the second person or the gun firing, but the man scrambled to his feet and then scampered away. I watched the two of them panting, Gavin much more than Durwood. Then, before they walked back across the road, Durwood stepped down and picked something up off the sidewalk. When they brought it over, we saw that it was a small plastic packet of meth. The guy had been a drug dealer, which would explain why he'd been circling the block over and over. The elusive serial rapist had never been found. Durwood seemed the most embarrassed about the debacle. Gavin figured that he was still stopped in justice. Me, I stopped tagging along, but I know that most of his crusades ended up in street fights. Some that he lost, some that he won. Sometimes he'd get unmasked, but that was okay. They didn't know who he was anyways. I stopped paying much attention. Around this time, I was starting to think ahead a little bit. I was going into high school and wasn't too glad to be put into the lowest set class in one of the worst schools in the city. Gavin wasn't going to high school. He was instead focusing on his crime-fighting career. Truth is, he was terribly behaved. He was probably suffering from undiagnosed ADHD. In retrospect, our school just couldn't support him. The worst came about when Gavin collected up his paper route money and Christmas cash, and some pilfered dollars from Howie's wallet, I suspect, to buy a police radio. Like the karate moves that he taught himself, he soon figured out what each of the coded numbers stood for. 3 days after this purchase, our projects got introduced to Officer Mitchell. He went door to door with a sketch of the mask that Gavin wore as the depths. Luckily for Gavin, no one in the projects talked to the cops, especially when it's about someone who lives there. This usually applies to drug dealers and gangsters, but they didn't make an exception for a mildly disturbed would-be superhero. Officer Mitchell came to my door last. My mother, who was home, told him that she'd never seen anyone wearing that mask before, but called me over to take a look. Mitchell had told her that he believed the suspect was a child. I took a look and immediately recognized the skeletal quality of the mask. Regardless, I shook my head no. The officer then kneeled down and looked into my eyes. He smelled like burnt coffee and sweat, and his face was puffy. His eyes were cold. Shifty. "Are you sure about that, son? No idea who this character could be?" Again, I shook my head no. He then stood up, adjusted his uniform, and then thanked my mother. He left, but I knew that he knew I was lying. I felt a chill go up my spine, and it lingered there long after he'd left. After that, and with much prodding from me and Durwood, Gavin finally decided to stop going out at night. "All right," he told us. "I'll wait for something big over the radio." This wasn't exactly reassuring, but was enough to settle my nerves, for the time being at least. One night, the three of us were hanging out in Howie's cramped basement, playing Xbox and sipping on some of the canned beer from the fridge, the police radio occasionally buzzing in the background. After we got to the final level of the game, the radio buzzed rather loudly with Car 64, be advised, 261, and a possible 217 in progress on Young in Lexington. Durwood and I heard it, but neither of us paid it any mind. Gavin, though, he sat right up. His ears were perked, dropped his controller to the floor. 10-4, this is Car 64 en pursuit to location. Over. Gavin jumped up, rushing towards the radio, and putting his ear right next to the speaker. Durwood and I were still sitting on the carpet, but my head was turned. What's up, Gavin? Shh, he hissed, then promptly put his ear back to the radio. There's a rape happening 10 blocks from us. At that moment, I felt cold wash over me. I turned off the game and listened with him. Several minutes crawled by of nothing, just the low fizzle of the radio static. Then we hear the officer's voice return. Dispatch, this is Car 64. We have a 217 requesting medical. Over. I didn't need to know the codes to figure out what had happened. The victim was dead. Roger, Car 64. Is a suspect in the area? Over. Negative, dispatch. Suspect is reported to be a number 1 male, possibly local. Witnesses say that he fled scene going west off a furlong. Notify all cars of the situation. 10-4. Durwood's hands then collapsed on Gavin's shoulder, and I could see that he was wincing. Maybe they'll catch him, I said pathetically. He's right, Durwood jumped in. No point in going over there. Come on, calm down. It took a few moments of restraining him, but Gavin agreed to stay in the basement. He turned on the TV and channel surfed for a bit, mostly watching cartoons. Durwood and I each popped open a new beer. Gavin didn't even finish his already opened one. Didn't even touch it, or even look at it. He just sat there, next to the radio, his eyes staring lifeless at nothing. The next day I saw the front cover of the newspaper. Hideous rape murder on Young in Lexington. Police officers in hot pursuit of the evasive culprit. This wasn't good. I didn't see Gavin for 2 weeks straight. I called his house a couple of times, but each time I either got an answering machine or his cousin, telling me that he was out and didn't know where he was. I was scared then. This was pretty bad. All I knew was the details of the suspect as they were relayed on the radio. It didn't take me long to find out that number 1 meant black. I didn't want to know how the depths was going out finding this guy. By the 3rd week, on a Wednesday afternoon after school, I heard an uncommon sound for our block, coming outside of my window. Heavy tires crunching over the ragged pavement. Any time a car came through our projects, it usually meant one thing: cops. I looked out my window to see a squad car had pulled into our block and was slowly creeping towards Gavin's house. My mind filled with tears of the worst, and I dashed down the steps and flew out of our front stoop. I watched Officer Mitchell emerge. His face was rigid, his movements stiff and sudden. He then jerked open the passenger door, and there was Gavin. His face was exposed, bloodied, one eye blackened and swollen shut, his hands cuffed behind him. Mitchell dragged Gavin towards the door, Gavin giving little resistance, showing even less mental presence. The policeman rapped his knuckles hard on the door, but no one ever came. Howie was working double shifts that week and hadn't been home. I looked around and saw everybody on our block watching out the windows or over the fences, at least those that had fences. "Where is your parental unit?" Mitchell demanded, shaking Gavin's bound form violently. Gavin shrugged. Mitchell gave him another shake and shouted in his face. I could feel the eyes of our block peering heavier on both of them. Officer Mitchell must have felt it too, because after taking a long glance at the scene around him, he went behind Gavin and took his cuffs off. Gavin was about to unlock his door and go into his house, but not before Officer Mitchell clasped his hands against the door and brandished Mitchell's mask in front of his face in a squelching grasp. "Listen to me, you little shit," he said low, but it carried an echo so that I could hear it. "Do yourself a favor and throw this and that stupid outfit in the trash. I see you wearing it again anywhere, and I'll arrest you for suspicion of mischief, and we'll see if you can even get a hate crime charge tied to you, eh?" He then threw the mask hard at Gavin's feet. Hate crime? Oh, Jesus, I thought. Had Gavin actually been going around the neighborhood harassing random black guys because of what he'd heard on the radio? Officer Mitchell grabbed his heavy belt under his paunch and adjusted his trousers. "Your guardian or parent will be called later this week to inform them of the situation. Have a nice day." The eyes of the project faded back into the house as Mitchell's prowler peeled off, and Gavin's door had slammed shut. I was glad to know that Gavin was okay, and thought at the time that the whole thing was over. Looking back, I now know how wrong I was. The next day I invited Gavin over, and the two of us hung out in my room. We were there to play cards, but mostly I needed to know what had happened. The first thing that I asked was about the shiner he had. "Did that prick Mitchell do that to you?" He shook his head, almost smiling. "Nah, this was from one of the rapists." I must have looked at Gavin with complete confusion. He then relayed to me how there had been more than one rapist murderer, and there had in fact been 5, maybe 10 who were involved in killing that girl. And the term he kept using, "I swear to you, Corey, there's literally hundreds of them." "What do you mean?" His eyes shifted to my door, perhaps checking that it was closed. Then he leaned closer and said, "The blacks." My heart started pounding in my chest. Was I really hearing this? He then told me how John Dyke, at whose house he had stayed on 2-week hunt, had told him about the uncontrollable lust that apparently all blacks have for raping white women. This theory wasn't surprising. John Dyke had grown up just a few years before us, in our projects, and was now an active Nazi skinhead. What shocked me was that Gavin had bought this crap. For Christ's sake, the girl had been killed hadn't even been white. "I'm not even going to bother fighting street crime anymore," he lectured on. "The real criminals that are sucking our community dry are being projected by the government. The immigrants taking our jobs. The Spanish spreading drugs. The gays and the lesbians poisoning our family." I had to stop him right there. Both my parents are Ukrainian Jews, so you can imagine how pissed off I was getting. Also, Gavin, Durwood and I were from 3 of only 5 white families in a majority of Hispanic ghetto. How the fuck could he believe all this neo-Nazi BS? "You're being an asshole," I told him, and I could feel myself shaking, not used to standing up for myself, and especially for other people. "John Dyke is one of those guys. Everything you're saying now is wrong, and what you're doing around the city is worse. It happens to be racist." He then told me in a cold, automatic monotone that racism doesn't exist. I lost it at that point. We both got into a big shouting match, and by the end, Gavin called me a horrible word, and then stormed out of the room. I couldn't get his words out of my head the whole night, and I kept shaking and grinding my teeth together. In the week that followed, I mostly stayed in my room after school. When I checked my email account, I saw that there was a message from Durwood. Oh great, the sidekick, I thought. Figured that it was Gavin's attempt to make some kind of amends to me, without even apologizing, by proxy. I deleted the message without reading it, and got on with my homework. The next day there was another message from Durwood. Again I dumped it without reading. On the 3rd day I had calmed down a bit over the whole thing, and was legitimately curious now. To my surprise, the message had nothing to do with Gavin. Durwood's message was a simple, "Hey, how's it going?" He even asked me about what homework was like in freshman year. Nothing to do with what had transpired between Gavin and me at all. Pleased with a friendly hello, I responded in kind, asking him how he was doing. 15 minutes later, there was a reply. We ended up chatting into the late evening until midnight. We continued doing this over the next couple of nights, and actually started hanging out after school. It was kind of nice since we only knew each other through Gavin, who seemed to be no longer in the picture. It was great that I had a new friend without completely separating myself from my past circle. Over the next month, I found out that he and I had a lot in common. One Friday night when we were munching on tacos and cheese at the local arcade, he confided to me what it was like being Gavin's sidekick. It was horrible, man. He had told me while shaking his head, which was hanging very low at this point. Everything he wanted to do since he was 5, and I was 3, I had to go along with. He wanted to play Lone Ranger. I was Tonto. And any bullshit adventure that he wanted to do. I got stuck tagging along. He interrupted himself with a joyless scoff. Did he ever tell you about the time when he was 9 and he wanted to live out in the wilderness so that he made me go with him to go camping out in the woods in Barrett Park? Shit. By the time that they found us, I had poison ivy all over my arms and had eaten a damn grub. Yuck. Well, why did you go along with him? I asked. How did you two even end up as friends? Because, he said with a long emphasis, his mother went to school with my mom. I guess she felt obligated after what happened. I nodded my head for a little bit. That did make sense for the initial relationship. But, I began again. Why did you just do whatever he said? You don't have to do what he wants just because he's your friend, or your mom wants you to. You're your own person. He then hid his eyes behind his hands. I soon realized that he was holding his head, looking as if he was about to be sick. I then heard him say in a weak voice, "There's even more. There's more. He just has this power over me. I just can't get loose of him. Fuck." Not knowing what to do, and very uncomfortable, I patted him on the shoulder and told him that it'd be all right. I suppose there was more that he could have told me, but honestly, I didn't want to know. Life was much easier for the next couple of months. No more craziness. No more bullshit. For the first time in my life, I was actually friends with someone who wasn't toxic and wasn't so demanding of my time. I was actually doing well in school, and there were talks of putting me in a higher set class for the next fall. After Easter weekend, however, I got back in touch with Gavin. It was early in the morning. 5 a.m. early. I could hear my phone vibrate on my bedside table. I picked it up without looking at it, the caller ID, and then answered it. "Hello," I said, rubbing my eyes. "Corey," I heard Gavin's voice crack. "You gotta let me come over. Jesus, I need your help." Hearing the panic in his voice jolted me awake. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. "Calm down, dude. What's happening?" "There's a news story about me. They're saying that I killed Officer Mitchell." My nerves locked. My body completely froze. No. "Listen," I heard him beg over the phone. "I'm about 10 minutes away. I'll sneak in through your backyard door to the basement. Your parents should still be asleep, right?" "Yeah," I muttered, just audible, hoping in fact that he couldn't hear it. "Great," he told me, and I bit my lip hard. "I'll be there soon." "Wait," I stopped him, and to my relief, the call was still in progress. "Why can't you hide at Dyke's? He's further away from your house." I could hear him suck his teeth through the receiver. "John's gone. He's been out of town for a while now. I got nowhere else to hide." "All right, you can stay in my room for a day until I get back from school. Then we'll have to figure something out for you." He thanked me, and I heard the short, quiet chime of my phone indicating that the call had ended. Having all this time to wait, my mind whirling with sudden revelation, I searched the internet on my phone. Not long after, I found the news article titled, "St. Cloud Cop Slain by Masked Man," which was completely with a video. Apparently, Officer Mitchell had responded to a robbery that took place at a convenience store. I watched the video. The video was from a security camera videotaping the outside of the storefront. I could see, even in the grainy quality and microscopic screen on my phone, one of the windows had been broken. Just then, as Officer Mitchell was walking out of the front door, I saw it. A shadow moving fast right towards him. He turned his head just before the figure ran into him, but not fast enough. He fell to the ground, clutching his side. The article said that he had been stabbed with a knife. I then watched in absolute horror as the cop reached for his gun holster, and the darkly veiled figure grabbed at it too, the two of them struggling until there was a sudden flash, and the officer lay motionless on the ground. A spray of dark fluid stained the concrete behind his head. The figure then shot his lifeless person twice more before dropping the revolver and turning to leave. As it turned, I paused the video. The face was covered in a black skeletal mask, with the piercing silver-tinted eyes, the same from Gavin's costume. Gavin had still not arrived. Unsure how many knew the costume was his, I quickly dialed 911. When Gavin got to my house, he was out of breath, panting and soaked with sweat. I got him a glass of tap water and sat him down on my bed. He then told me the story in his own words. Listen, last night I was at home, okay? I had been out on patrol for a long while, and had caught a cold. For the last few days I've been in bed. I looked at Gavin closely. I could tell that he wasn't sick. You said you weren't going on patrol anymore. Yeah, he snapped hastily. But there's 2 fugitives reported in the news who were suspected of being in St. Cloud. I had heard nothing of this. I saw the video, I told him. The guy was wearing your costume. That's the thing, Gavin begged, reaching up at me and grabbing my shirt. I haven't worn that costume in months now. I swear to God, I threw it out in the trash. I told you, John and I were focusing on organizing strikes against immigrants who were taking our jobs. I wasn't going out and busting heads anymore. And there's the other crazy thing. There's no way that I could have known that a robbery had taken place. I listened, analyzing each word. He had mentioned details about the case that I knew from the news report. But of course he would. He probably saw the news story, which was why he panicked. But still, that's the thing, he rambled on. His eyes were wide, pulling harder on my shirt. 3 days ago, the police radio went missing. I don't know where it is. I put my hands on my arms and tried to ease him off of me. Just then, there came a hard, echoing knock from the front door. Police, open up! Gavin swiveled his head to the direction of the sound. He turned to look at me and seemed to search my face before springing up to look out the window. Police, he muttered, and his voice carried just enough for me to hear it. But how? He then turned. I stood up. I was ready to dash out the room, but for some reason, I just couldn't. You, he yelled, pointing his finger accusingly at me. You called the cops. I just stood there, stupid and silent, holding my arms up to try to gesture for him to calm down. Without another second of hesitation, he sprang on me and began hitting me in the side with his knees and his fists. My life flashed before my eyes, as did the thought that I was alone with a killer. Help! I screamed, hoping that the police outside would hear me. Help! I wailed, and was soon cut off by a blow to the jaw. I raised my hands defensively over my head and curled up, trying to block his blows that were striking down hard all over my body. I didn't hear the front door get broken down, or even my bedroom door slam open, but I did hear Gavin scream as he was pulled off by 2 police officers. They then proceeded to pin him to the floor and cuff his hands. My skin was throbbing from the speed of the pulse, and I didn't feel any pain, though in truth I was badly beaten up. They hauled Gavin off, kicking and screaming, explaining that he was under arrest for the murder of a police officer, Sergeant Jerome Ferguson Mitchell. It didn't take them long to find Gavin guilty. They found the costume in the trash in front of his house, although he swore to God that he had gotten rid of it well before the murder took place. Beyond that, they had motive. Everyone in the projects had seen Gavin berated by Mitchell and knew that being a costume crusader meant to him. Still, it was like pulling teeth to get people to testify. Only thing was, they never found his police radio. Gavin's court-appointed lawyer tried to use this fact to raise doubt, since the prosecution kept arguing that Gavin had been known to have a police radio, which would explain how he knew the robbery took place, and how he knew Officer Mitchell would be there since he knew his car number. They ended up trying him as an adult, gave him 25 to life. I couldn't believe this, and it happened to him even with what he had done. Christ, he wasn't even 16 at the time. By the time I was nearly done with high school, the entire neighborhood had forgotten about Gavin. It was pretty much taboo to talk about him, and even Durwood, and I avoided the subject. But honestly, with time, we didn't care. We had both turned things around. When Durwood finished middle school, he went to the same school that I did, which made school so much better since I had my best friend to hang out with. By the time I was in my senior year, We had both joined a few school clubs, no teams, I'm afraid, and started a games club of our own. And after moving up to some college prep classes, my grades were finally improving. I had attended a careers workshop and had made up my mind to go into an apprenticeship program for electricians. Durwood asked me about it later and decided that he would do the same thing after he graduated. The summer after my senior year, Durwood and his mother were moving out to Minneapolis. I was sad to see him go, but I could understand that maybe it was the best for him to leave all the bitter memories behind. The day he was going to move, I helped him pack. Around lunchtime, we were in his room, all of his things in tiny cardboard cubes around us. We took a break as we were both beat. Then his mom called him, and he asked to wait for me. After a few minutes, I got bored and tried to lift a few more boxes. Now all the boxes had been light up until now, mostly filled with clothing. This box that I lifted was unexpectedly heavy, and when I eased off the stack, it fell from my grip and crashed to the floor. The sealed top opened up on impact, and all the items spilled out on the carpet. I rushed to get everything back to the box, and that's when I saw what had given it so much weight. A black metallic radio. It was a police radio. Gavin's police radio. The same he swore that had gone missing 3 days before the murder took place. I sat there staring at it. I then heard footsteps creak outside of the room, and the door was squeaking open. This story takes place over a year ago. If you remember the story about Michael, then that will save a ton of time. Now, after Michael, a friend of mine, Steve, started to hate dealing with him as well. Steve's girlfriend ran off with another guy, took his child away from him, making it hard for him to see his son. Steve had come to my house depressed and needing someone to talk with. And of course, as a friend, I was there for him and had him come over daily just to keep his mind off of things. Fast forward a few months. We started a band together. I was buying him drinks and cigarettes, putting gas in his car to help him out while he was working on his YouTube career. Steve finally had gotten monetized. For a few months, he was actually making money. He got back onto heavy drugs, and he started to bring it into the back house, and he started using it, then suddenly started making excuses as to why he didn't want to continue his YouTube channel. First, it started with that they were doing new test stuff, and they were making it harder for him to make any money on YouTube. Then all of a sudden, he got strung out, and when he came off the stuff, he got a major headache and started getting irritable about everything, and didn't want to work at all. I had argued with him for a few days that he should keep going, or he won't be making anything. And then he can't complain that he doesn't have anything to show for it. After being yelled at that he was coming off the shit and had a migraine, I gave up. I let him do whatever he wanted. A couple of months down the road, we had to move farther away into a 55 and older community for a short period of time. I started doing cryptocurrency while I was out there. Started teaching Steve what I had learned, hoping that he would get started on something that would actually make him some money. He got interested in it, and he started learning off of me, and me off of him. As the days had went on, he started messing with a woman named Keisha. Since Keisha was already an old roommate of mine, I warned him not to mess with her because all she does is do drugs and use men for what she wants, and then she throws them away. Steve didn't listen. He got a job with her at Burger King. Decided to sell his work computer. Eventually got screwed over by her. For months after, all I heard was him bitch about how stupid she was and how she won't amount to anything in life. A few months later, we had to move yet again to my roommate's boss's house for a little while. This is where it gets even worse. Steve kept coming over after I told him that I needed time to work. Then when he would come over, he would just complain and talk every time that he walked into the door. Shortly after, things started to look like it was getting a little bit better. His attitude and his emotions were starting to get in check. Right about the time that we found out that my roommate's grandfather had died, and we would move back into the old house. So we moved back in, when suddenly a few days had gone by. Steve comes asking for a place to stay, because everyone at his neighbors were starting stuff with him, and he just needed an escape. I told him this isn't my house, so I was told just a few days, that way he can lay low. I gave him the back house to stay in so that he could cool off and have some alone time. During the first few days, he would walk into the main house and start getting an attitude about everything that wasn't going his way. Despite telling him multiple times that I was told only a few days, he decided that he would keep staying there and bring people over, even though I told him not to. A week had gone by. My roommate had enough, and she was sick with the flu at this point. She told me that she didn't want to see Steve that whole day, so I agreed and told him over Facebook that she didn't want anyone there. He replied with, "What does that even mean? I don't understand. This whole time, the social behavior bullshit. I don't even have a place to live. You're basically telling me that even if I did live there, that I'm not allowed to fucking have guests? I've been trying to clean up the backyard, and I've been trying to hire someone to clean your fucking house. You won't even get the money to pay these people. You've turned down 2 people that would have had your home looking great. Mind you, a couple of those people were drug addicts and just wanted a hit, and I don't trust people that will possibly steal from me." The messages went on as such. I don't understand at all. I mean, what difference does it make if I bring somebody over? If that person is going to be with me the whole time and nowhere near her or you, so it's irrelevant whether they're over there or not. It's so fucking stupid. It really is. It's absolutely antisocial, unfriendly behavior. I had replied with, meaning she doesn't want anyone or you there. She's feeling like shit. She's tired of seeing you every single day. She's already yelled at me today and said that you were only supposed to be there a few days, not a week, which I did tell you ahead of time. Suddenly I get messages that says, "Well, fine, sure. I'll just come get my fucking clothes, and I'll live in my car. Thanks a lot. You're real helpful. You really don't give a fuck about anybody but your fucking self. He was right about you. That I did choose the wrong fucking friend. Ozzy, I mean. He was right that he said that I chose the wrong friend." Suddenly, that's when I blow at him, telling him this.
Don't be giving me that fucking bullshit. It's not my fucking fault. I tried, and you know what? She said from the get-go, only a few fucking days. I don't fucking care about you, motherfucker! I am the one who has helped you with your gas, who has fucking tried to help you with your fucking career. And you know what? If you think I don't fucking care about you, think about all the shit I've done for you. Don't fucking give me that. I have dealt with all your fucking drama, all your fucking depression. All you have done is make my life a fucking living hell, and all I've tried to do is fucking help you. You make fucking excuses, and you know what? Guess what? I don't give a fuck anymore. You think I don't care about anybody? Well, guess what? Maybe I should just stop giving a fuck about everybody but myself. So don't be giving me that Ozzy was right, you chose the wrong fucking friend. Because what has he done for you besides bring you down? What have I tried to do besides help you?
Suddenly I get blocked from Facebook. He goes to grab his stuff, and when I go into the back house, it looks trashed. Things are thrown around everywhere. Just goes to show you that no matter what you do for people, they'll always throw a fit when they don't get their way. So Steve, if you hear this, or someone knows you that hears this, I hope you know that it wasn't me that fucked up a good friendship. Also, I hope the people that you run around with now give you everything that you think they will, because obviously I wasn't good enough for you. I can relate to the pain of losing a girlfriend. As a child, my friends and I would drift apart. But often, that was a result of family moves, or institutionally motivate separations into different classes or schools. We were too little to control these situations, and too young to let our sorrow linger. Soon new friends were on the horizon, and those friends from the past became pleasant memories. But a number of years ago, I began to socialize with a woman that I met at work. We both were starting careers at the same university. We usually met each other after work to run together in a neighborhood park, and we shared our frustrations about our work, our goals, and our hopes as we ran. She introduced me to the ice hockey games. I invited her to concerts. We attended conferences together and shared hotel rooms to cut down on costs. Occasionally our travels took us overseas. We were best friends, and were also supportive colleagues. A few years ahead of her in the system, I stood up for her on a number of occasions, trying to help smooth processes and expectations on that her advancement would be easier than had mine. I was outspoken in my concern for her, and it wasn't always without risks, but it seemed the right thing to do. And then she just stopped meeting me after work for our usual runs. We stopped attending conferences together. I tried to talk to her about the way things were changing between us, but she was not responsive. She brushed my concern aside by telling me that she was just getting very busy, and she was also working on a new relationship. At the same time, my marriage was collapsing. I remember one day, after she had snubbed me, walking to my car, and realizing that it hurt more to lose our friendship than it had my marriage. In many ways, there's something more intimate about a friendship with a woman. I trusted her implicitly, and then she faded away. I felt horribly betrayed. It really did hurt. She left my university and took a job elsewhere. Occasionally, we would see each other at conferences, and we are politely professional. I have other wonderful female friends. Some I have maintained relationships with since high school. Others I've made more recently. I'm lucky to have such good friendships, but occasionally I still feel a twinge of hurt. My best friend Andy and I were inseparable in high school. We finished each other's sentences, wore each other's clothes, shared a diary, and at one point we had lived together. Our intense chemistry was comparable to a romantic relationship, but more powerful because of its platonic nature. When Andy was young, her father had committed suicide. Her mother was barely competent, and Andy had a parent herself at a young age. She was dangerously close to being outright narcissistic, and I chalked it up to her overcompensating for lost attention and love. When she met her first boyfriend, I knew our friendship was ending. Eerily, she began to cut and dye her hair to resemble him, and wore his clothing. She was becoming him, sharing and losing identity in him, and simultaneously displaying her recovery of male attention in full force. It was insurance, preventing another important man from leaving her. Her transformation signaled to me that our friendship was also mimicry. Looking back, I understand that the closeness she shared with me was a disguise for survival. She did everything in her power to attract me as a best friend. I was a substitute for the solid foundation that she lacked and craved. We played out the parent-teen rebellion, since she couldn't with her mother. I wish that I had the maturity in high school to step back from that situation, to let go in healthy dosages, and to realize that she wasn't abandoning me. She couldn't help herself. The relationships that she fabricated in high school were mad attempts at family creation. Today she's living far away with her boyfriend. I hope that she's happy, and the distance removes her enough from anything familiar, giving her the opportunity to start from scratch and to give up the mime.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.